Cool. Hey everyone. Handy dandy light. Handy dandy remote control. The Dodge Hornet. How I ended up. I'm going to tell the story of how I ended up with this car. Because weirdly, I did not want. I didn't even know it existed. I'm going to talk about the car shopping experience. Why I ended up having to go with a domestic. Because it was not my first choice. I'm also going to talk about what I was actually going to the dealership for. And how the universe kind of, I don't know, it kind of aligned where it was making this the only choice. It was very strange, actually. Okay, it all started with my BMW. So before this, I had a BMW. It was 3 Series, really great car, really liked it. It was my hobby. Anybody who's owned a BMW knows. Lots of fixing on it constantly, which is fine. Really great driving car. Anyway, it was perfect for the island I was living on, temperate, all of that. Nice windy roads, no snow. But I needed a hobby due to a couple of severe health scares. I couldn't go wander around in the woods by myself anymore. So I chose fishing. On the I didn't want to do the big sea fishing thing. I really wasn't into that. And you got to be super outfitted for it. It just didn't appeal. I like lake fishing, growing up, river fishing, stuff like that. And on the island, they have these small, tiny little lakes that you can go to. Most people use pontoon boats or those little floaty things, one man things you can throw on the roof. So I decided to do that, trout fishing. I got geared up for trout fishing, went out and bought a boat. Then I needed something to tow it. I was considering putting a hitch on the BMW, which actually wasn't going to be very practical. And the boat was just too heavy for me to manhandle to throw it on a roof rack. Like totally impractical anyway. Could have done it, but didn't do it. So I needed a car. I started shopping for somebody suggested little SUV. I was thinking a truck, a Ranger. But I thought, okay, I'll try a little SUV. I don't like SUVs, never did. But I found a nice one. It was at a Dodge dealership up Island. Now, here's the thing. I had to find a car that was ready to go. I had to swap vehicles. I couldn't wait for 6 months or whatever for something to come in. 2 weeks even. Might have made 2 weeks, but I needed whatever car I was buying, I needed it to be there. And it just so happens that I saw this used Cadillac SRX. I thought, hey, that thing will tow. It does 2,500 pounds or something, even more than that, I think, actually. So it already had a tow hitch on it. I was like, okay, it's good to go. Let's go. Found out that the price of that, even though it was low, the payments are set up to make them almost equal to a brand new car payment. They just switch the terms, right? You go a longer term for a new car and a shorter term for the used car. And they make sure that happens. Don't think you can finance a cheap car and think it's cheaper than a new car. Let's get this going. Self-driving. Okay, so I started looking at dealerships and see what they had on the lot. Now, I had to go with domestic because domestics have a lot more wiggle room in their pricing than imports like Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Subaru, all the reliable cars. Yeah. They have a very small margin to play with. And I needed, I was, my loan for the BMW, I still had $5,000 left to pay off, and I needed to piggyback that onto the new loan and keep the payments down. So I had to go domestic. because it was probably $15,000 or so in a brand new car from a domestic dealer as wiggle room. So that left me with Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Ram, Jeep things. I was not interested in the Escape. I thought it was ugly, and they were having problems with their Ecotec engine. They were blowing up and leaking. There was all kinds of problems with the new Ecotec. Could have went with a Ranger. I wanted to go with a Ranger, but there just wasn't any on the island. And the ones that were the tricked up Lariat things, and they were past $60,000, which is the price of a brand new F-150 work truck or a Dodge Ram. I looked at, well, buddy at the dealership said, hey, I can put you in a Renegade, or I got a really nice Compass, and I was like, I didn't know the Compass other than the old one was ugly, unreliable, and I don't know, piece of junk. I'm sure people swear by them, but there was no appeal. Although now there is, I understand now. It's probably a really good car, the new ones. I actually went to Chevy GMC on the island there, and they had a Colorado. It was the only Colorado on south of the island, actually halfway down the island, from Duncan down. And it had an off-road package. Not everything I was really after. It didn't have a tow hitch, but I could have put one on. It was fine. So I went in to see if I could qualify for that. And I didn't. Which was weird because the Jeep guy told me that you got good credit. You should be able to. Yeah, he got me to go for anywhere between 40 to 50,000. I could finance on his lot, but I didn't want. That was up in Nanaimo, and I didn't want to drive up there. So I went and looked at their Trailblazer, so I didn't know what that was. That was brand new too, and I sat in it, and it was a cheap piece of crap. I wasn't interested. Doesn't even look that great. Maybe if you got the S package or whatever it was, but the one that they had there was just base model. And I thought, well, nobody's going to buy this. If I don't find something else, I can come back and get this. The last place I could go was Harris Dodge, Jeep, Chrysler. Oh, there was also Willys. They had a bunch of Hornets that were on order, the RTs, the hybrids, but no pictures. And it was the same with the Harris Dodge one. They didn't have any pictures up. They had one coming soon, but they said they had a Hornet with an 8-ball and track pack, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go for that. That was 49,000 or something, 48,000 Canadian. So I went there well, actually, I didn't know what the Hornet was. There was no pictures of it. I went there actually to see if they had, because something sitting on the lot forever, and they do, because it's Dodge, Jeep, Chrysler. They always have stuff that are like a year or two old sitting on the lot. I went there to look at. They had a Cherokee. I think it had the V6 still, the last run of the V6. It was a 2022 or something like that. And it was an Altitude, so it wasn't totally tricked up, and it wasn't the base model. And I thought, that'll be perfect. I'll go look at the Hornet, find out what it is, but I'm going there to buy this Cherokee. So I show up, salesman sitting there. Now, all through this, cars were disappearing quickly. Stuff that I had my eye on the next week or the weekend would pass and it would be gone. So it was dwindling. My my selection, my availability selection of cars was dwindling. But there was just delivered this Hornet that I'm sitting in. He's like, "Hey, we just had this one land." I said, "Yeah, I saw it on the website. I'm actually interested in the 8 ball." And he said, "No, it was damaged during transport. One of the wheels is cracked, and now we can't get it started." Which, in hindsight, I'm glad because some Hornets are good, some are really bad. I went to go look at this thing. It was in blue steel, is what you call it, and I love the reference to Zoolander. Then he brought it out. He got in the driver's seat, drove around, pulled over, said, "Here, let's switch." I got in it, and I said, "Whoa, okay, this is nice. This feels," and then I was driving it around, and I'm like, "This feels like a European car." Absolutely 100%. It did not feel like a domestic car. I didn't know a whole lot about it. I texted my buddy. I'm like, "Hey, dude, what's a Hornet?" He's like, "Oh, it's a rebadged Alpha," which is, you don't know what to make of that because Alpha's a crappy make too. They just look good. So I'm looking at this going, okay, this thing's an Alfa Romeo, which was surprising. I did a read up on it while it was getting financed and how I told the story about it. That's actually when I learned about it. I went in there. They were asking 54,000, and I think that was $2,000 more than the RS MSRP. I think they were trying to make up. The manager was trying to make up for the broken Hornet that they couldn't sell with this one. Anyway, I got it down to where with my loan on it, it was 40 something. Well, with taxes and everything, it came out to 50. It was pretty close to the price they were asking with my loan on it, with the taxes on the provincial tax. I really don't remember. It didn't really matter. But they worked the finance off of the Dodge thing that I had done earlier, got it working, and boom, I was driving it home. This thing's super complicated. It's got all this tech stuff in it. It took me 2 weeks to learn it, sitting in the car going through settings. It was a decent experience with Dodge Harris there. It's still, it's still a dealership. It's still high pressure sales, the whole thing. Oh, my light's dying. Anyway, the weird thing about it was that I'd find a car, I'd do some research on it, and it would disappear. Or I'd find a car that I'd like, I'd go there, and for whatever reason, the financing wouldn't work. That Chevy Colorado with the package, off-road package, was cheaper than this Hornet. And I went in there with the finance manager, and he said, "No go. They want you to finance something cheaper." And that's when I looked at the Trailblazer, and I was like, "I don't want to buy this." So it was really weird. Like, I knew nothing about the car, and all the cars that I was really looking at were disappearing or weren't available. This thing just landed, and knowing nothing about it, just sit in it, buy it, and boom. Because I didn't know anything about the car, I went to the Dodge Hornet Owners Forum. I'm a car guy, and it's a first run of a first vehicle. I know there's going to be quirks and mistakes and things that don't work and stuff like that. But maybe this will help. So that's why I went to the forum, and I learned on there there's some good ones, some bad ones. There are quirks to this car, and all of them are alpha quirks. I also joined the Tenali forum just to see if they're having the same problems, and they are. It's just that they don't have as many vehicles on the road as the Dodge Hornet here in North America. There's way more Dodge Hornets, even though they're not selling. Or maybe they are selling, but they're making too many of them, and people aren't buying. Yeah, so in some way, like, and I was actually looking forward to this YouTube channel so that I could talk about how good this car is, because it's getting slammed, and it's a secret in the forum, basically, of how fun these things are, how good they are. I mean, there's horror stories on the other half of these that don't work. This little 2-liter Hurricane made in Italia is a gas. It makes all the right noises. It's got all the right oomph. I mean, I sat in the Tiguan and I'm like, this thing's an appliance. And normally I like Volkswagens because they drive really well, but the sport utility thing, not into it. I did like the Mazda 5. That thing was beautiful, but like I said, I had to go to a domestic. I was even looking at I wanted a Subaru Crosstrek and was trying to figure out how I could do that with the loan on top and the whole thing, because I knew there was only probably maybe $2,000 in there to play with, but I would end up financing quite a lot of money for that if they had any. And no, that's what it was. They didn't have any. They didn't have any Crosstreks landed at the dealership. I went to Subaru. They were empty. Their lot was empty. They had a couple of things there. None of them I could. They had a brand new Outback, and I mean that thing was huge, tons of money. But yeah, I mean the Outback was a little bit small. So I got the Hornet, threw a tow hitch on it. Now I can tow my boat for fishing. What I also didn't realize is that during this process, I was going to be moving to Alberta. Halfway through the process, I found out I was going to leave the island and move to Alberta. So we ended up buying a big, what are those utility trailers to tow the boat on, but also to move things cross country. And when I went through the mountains with this fully heavy loaded trailer, it was a 5x8, takes 2,200 pounds. The thing was loaded down to the as much as we could get on there, as heavy as it would take it. I did 90, 95 the whole way from the island to Edmonton across 2 provinces, province and a half, through the mountains. This thing worked perfectly. Lived up to its name. Sport utility thingy. Yeah, and then we got here and bombed around a bunch of lakes, me and my dad. Spent the winter here in it. It snowed. It snowed one winter there on the island. I had my car, and it wouldn't even get up the hill to get to my house. This thing, because it's got the all-wheel drive, beautiful little car to drive around. Fun too, because the back swings out with the all-wheel drive. The front slip, the back kicks in, and then you can do little donut things. Yeah. It was really weird how I got this car. I've never shopped like that before. I've never had an experience shopping like that before. Usually I find a car, I go look at it, and if it's good, I get it. I don't usually start with, I don't know what I'm getting. Let's see what's available and end up with something. Very strange. Very unique experience. Yeah. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Start an argument. Tell them Hornets are awesome. Especially your car guy friends. That'll be good conversation. See you next time. Get the remote to work.